A few years ago, there was a very compelling book written by Jonathan Cahn called The Harbinger. And you probably read it, but if not, it was the story of how there was such a powerful correlation between what happened on 9/11 when the planes attacked the Twin Towers in New York City, hearkening all the way back to the time of George Washington and many things that happened in that setting. There was a couple hundred years in between. Well, I've just finished a book that really reminded me so much of The Harbinger, but this is a new correlating book. It's showing the coincidences, the repeating patterns, if you will, about something that is happening today, even as I record this. Now, a few months ago, I recorded a video, an interview with Ken Shorgen, who is a global economist, and also he works in some of the markets, understands the banking. He also has a master's degree in history. And he was showing throughout every 100-year period, at 100-year cycle, the same things happen regarding war, regarding what the markets are doing, the economy, that there's nothing new under the sun. Just as King Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 3, there's nothing new under the sun. What has gone before will come again. And I think we're actually going to be observing this very phenomenon one more time. And I'm going to share with you a book that I've just finished. Now, it is not a political book. It's more about what I call a prophetic book. It's much like The Harbinger, but the character is former President Donald Trump. But it's not going to be about his role in what he did as president. It's going to be about who the man is and where did he come from. Ah, have I piqued your interest? Well, I want to share some interesting facts that the author, Troy Anderson, actually has, I'm holding the book here so you can see, um, uncovered that fall along those coincidental prophetic lines. It's a repeating pattern. It's a curious repeating pattern that happened less than 150 years ago and culminates to this day in September of 2024. Now, I want to share with you some interesting facts that I just picked out of the book because I'm not going to tell you everything. I do want you to go get the book because I'll tell you what, as an author, I know what it's like. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into writing a book. But you want to have validation from the readers. You want to know that your work means something. And in this case, was it God inspired? I think possibly it was. Is it God saying Donald Trump should be president? Absolutely not. But we already know that he has already been president once. It's just, it will, there are some things that are going to talk in the book that talk about the 2024 election, but what I want to look at is much more curious in my estimation. First thing I want to talk to you about from the book is didn't happen so long ago. It's July of 2024, and I'm sure everyone knows about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. It happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I was watching it live. So I was just stunned like everyone else. And I'm sure if you weren't watching it live, you've seen a rendering or a recording of it. But you will not recall that President Trump was shot in the ear. It grazed his ear. And only by the grace of God did it not go through his brain. He turned at the right time, as they said. But here's what I want you to listen and focus on. When he stood up, the Secret Service rushed in and covered him for a while, but they wanted to get him off that platform quickly because the shooter was still at large, had not been engaged yet. So they were trying to get him up off the floor, and when he stood up, there was that epic photograph, that picture with blood coming down his face, but he was bleeding from his ear, his right ear. And what he said was so strange. I thought this was curious because I've seen a lot of Trump rallies, and he always wears the suit, the tie, the laced up shoes. Now that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, he was more casual, open shirt and that. But for some reason, he didn't have his shoes on, and you can hear this when you watch the recording. He, as they stood him up, he said, "Where are my shoes? Let me get my shoes." And I thought, that's very odd. Why were his shoes off? Okay. Now, the author of the Trump Code, Troy Anderson, points out that in Leviticus chapter 8, there is one of many rituals. It's called the rite of consecration, and it's when a priest was consecrated. Now, here is the correlation that is so astounding in my mind. When the priest is consecrated, he must take the blood of the animal sacrifice. They always do animal sacrifices. They'll take a blood from the animal sacrifice and apply it to his right ear. Okay, now get the picture. The priest in the rite of consecration 4,000 years ago had to apply the blood of the lamb or the ram or whatever was sacrificed to the tip of his right ear. And it was required that the priest remove his shoes. So he's standing there at the altar, getting the anointing with blood on his right ears, and he doesn't have shoes on. Isn't that interesting? And here's another final thing regarding that account. In many occasions in the temple, there was an appointed Levite who was called the cupbearer. And he would bring the king's cup for the sacrifice. It was used in the wine. It was used on the altar. It was used for festivals. It was used for anointings. It was used for rituals. And this was a ritual, the rite of consecration. So the cupbearer was there also. Now, the author, Troy Anderson, found this a very interesting anomaly or correlation, as I say. The word butler, as in Butler, Pennsylvania, had in its ancient Teutonic meaning, it was the definition of that word in Teutonic was the cup bearer. The cup bearer. Yes. And you think about a butler. What is a butler? It's someone who serves his master. He brings the cup. He, does many things. So you have three things here that happened in July at the day of that attempted assassination. You have President Trump with blood on his right ear. He didn't have his shoes on, and he was in Butler, Pennsylvania. He was in Cup Bearer, Pennsylvania. All right, tuck that away. We're going on to some more fact finding. Donald Trump, his name is Donald John Trump. He was named for his Uncle John, who was his father's brother. Now, his Uncle John was quite well-known. He was a mathematician. He was a scientist. He was a professor at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he lived at the end of the life of Nikola Tesla. Now, I don't know that he knew Tesla, but this is how the two paths crossed. Nikola Tesla died in 1943. Now, former President Trump, was born in 1947, 3 years later. But when Tesla died, the FBI came in quickly and confiscated all of his papers. Now, oops, that sounds a little familiar. Last year, the FBI went into Mar-a-Lago and confiscated all of the papers. And they still haven't been returned. All right, back to the book. John Trump was well known in the circles of government, but also in science. He was just a very smart man, very well respected. So when the FBI confiscated Tesla's papers, what they did is they contacted John Trump and said, "Would you come take a look at these? We can't make heads or tails out of it." Now, you got to understand, If you know anything about Nikola Tesla, he was purported to have been able to transcend dimensions, do interdimensional travel, time travel. He was, it was rumored that he could defy gravity. Okay? It was also rumored that he knew what was really going on with what we call UFOs or UAPs, unidentified flying objects, and identified aerial craft and all that. And so who knows what all John Trump got to see. He was able to examine them for several weeks, but he couldn't take any of the material with him. But, and he didn't tell anyone. He was sworn to secrecy by the FBI. That's not, we know, but they never tell us anything. But I want to do a sidebar here. A few weeks ago, Donald Trump said if he is elected, one of the things he's going to do is have full disclosure. He's going to have full disclosure on the Kennedy assassination. He's also going to have full disclosure on UFOs. So, does he already know something that he learned from his Uncle John? Because as it turned out, John Trump became Donald Trump's mentor from the time he was about 11 or 12 years old. And he's not revealed a lot of what he learned from his Uncle John, other than we know that Donald Trump is a very successful businessman, a billionaire. He knows how to do many things. He has the art of negotiation. He's in real estate, you know. So what did he learn from his Uncle John, and how much is his own? Who knows? All right. Now this is this is the last part I want to share with you, and it's quite phenomenal. All right. So we have this book, The Trump Code. And it's subtitled Exploring Time Travel, Nikola Tesla, and the Lineage of Donald J. Trump. All right? So, what I want to share with you now is a different book. In the 1800s, between 1881 and 1886, I think it was, an author named Ingersoll Lockwood wrote a series of children's books. You know, little boys like to read adventure stories. When I was a kid, they liked to read the Hardy Boys. Okay, that was a big one for them. And Flash Gordon, Superman. We had a lot of them in comic books. But my grandchildren's generation, they like Harry Potter. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but you know what I mean. It's supernatural, it's sci-fi, it's mystery, it's adventure. Well, little boys in the 1800s were no different. And Ingersoll Lockwood wrote a series of children's books, and they were called, I kid you not, the Baron Trump novels. The Baron Trump novels. Now, sidebar again, in case you're not familiar, Donald Trump and his wife Melania, our former First Lady, have a son together named Baron Trump. He's 18 years old now. But I want to show you something that happened. I want to show you a picture of him when he was 12, about the age of the little character in the Baron Trump novels of 1880s. Now, the Baron Trump novels were about a little boy who was wealthy, and he had all kinds of adventures, including time travel and interdimensional travel and aliens, like ETs. Is that, I mean, that's just like little boys. But it's curious because those are the things that Nikola Tesla was investigating at the very time the Baron Trump novels were being written. They were written about when Nikola Tesla was in his 30s, in the mid 1880s is when the books came out. So the first two of the Baron Trump novels actually were about the little boy, 11 or 12, the rich little boy, who, by the way, lived in a place called Trump Castle. Seriously. He would go and travel, do time travel, etc. So, but the third in that series was a little different, and I want to read an excerpt from the Trump Code about the third in the series of the Baron Trump novels of 1880. And this is what it says. The third book was ominously entitled The Last President. In this story, an unlikely candidate for president, a businessman, is elected, and political upheaval and societal discord follows his election. On the night of the election, mobs the size of the city, and we're talking New York City, were under the head of anarchists and socialists. They converged on the Fifth Avenue Hotel where this last president was celebrating his victory, and they were shouting, "Death to the rich man." Now that it's kind of alluded that the rich man who became the last president was actually the boy Baron Trump who grew up. But it doesn't say that that's for sure the same character. But that's the name of the third in the series of the Baron Trump novels, The Last President. Now, here is a curiosity. In the book written in 1886 about the last president, and he's celebrating his victory night, he is celebrating at the Fifth Avenue Hotel in New York City. Now, the Fifth Avenue Hotel doesn't exist anymore. But on that very same spot, on that very same piece of real estate stands today Trump Tower. Now, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, maybe this will. A lot of researchers and investigative reporters and that who this all has been recently come to the forefront, and there's been a lot of talk about it. And the Baron Trump novels have made a resurgence. They're selling again. So you might want to also consider reading those. But a lot of these research investigators are saying that they are quite astounded that there is a remarkable resemblance between the boy that modeled for the cover of the Baron Trump novels in 1881 and the son of Donald and Melania when he was 12 years old. Now, think about this. The Baron Trump novels was written in 1881 by Ingersoll Lockwood. So Lockwood, or else his publisher, contracted with an artist because the cover of the book, the Baron Trump novels, is an artist's rendering. It's not a photograph. And so they came up with this boy. Either he really existed as a model or they just came up with him in their head. They had an idea of what the boy should look like. But I want to show you a side-by-side picture of the cover of the original first edition, 1881, of the Baron Trump novels, alongside 12-year-old Baron Trump, the son of Donald and Melania. And you be the judge. I think it's pretty amazing. What has gone before will come again. There's nothing new under the sun. Well, that's it for now. I'm going to put a link down below in the comments to that video I made on repeating patterns. So if you haven't seen it or you'd like to rewatch it again, it's just one of many repeating patterns that seems to be part of the natural order of things that God set in motion when He called the worlds into being and He created the evening and the morning of the first day. So until next time, shalom.